There are some extinct animals that look impressive. You see a T-Rex and think, yeah, I definitely don't want that chasing me. Fair enough. But then there are animals that make you stop and think, who approved this design? Because apparently at several points in Earth's history, evolution decided that normal-looking animals weren't enough. So we got predators with ridiculously long teeth, herbivores with bizarre horns sticking out of their skulls, a giant bird that looked like it had absolutely no business being that large, a mammal with a head that looked like it had been built for a bar fight, and a creature that basically looks like a camel, horse, and oversized tapir were thrown into a blender. And the weirdest part? These aren't mythical creatures. They weren't invented by someone trying to make a monster. They were real animals. They walked across real landscapes. They ate real food. They fought, reproduced, competed for territory. And eventually, they disappeared. So let's meet 7 of the strangest animals to ever walk on Earth. And we're starting with one that looks like evolution forgot to install a safety feature. Number 1. Dinogorgon. About 255 million years ago, long before Tyrannosaurus rex ever existed, the world was already producing some seriously unpleasant predators. One of them was Dinogorgon. And yes, the name sounds like something you'd fight at the end of a video game. Dinogorgon belonged to a group called the Gorgonopsians. They weren't dinosaurs. They were therapsids, part of the evolutionary branch that eventually leads toward mammals. But if you saw one walking toward you, you probably wouldn't be thinking about evolutionary relationships. You'd be thinking about the teeth. Dinogorgon had an elongated skull and enormous canine teeth projecting from its jaws. The animal was built around its head, and that's what makes it so unsettling. Modern predators usually have a fairly balanced appearance. A wolf has a relatively narrow head. A lion has powerful jaws, but its skull still looks recognizably like a mammal's. Dinogorgon looked like someone took the basic mammalian body plan and turned the aggression setting all the way up. It lived in the late Permian, when much of the world was hot, dry, and increasingly unstable. And this was near the end of an entire era. The Permian extinction was approaching. But Dinogorgon didn't know that. As far as it was concerned, this was home. It hunted, it competed, it survived, and somewhere across those ancient landscapes, an animal with enormous saber-like teeth was moving through the vegetation looking for its next meal. Then, Earth's biggest mass extinction arrived. The climate changed dramatically, ecosystems collapsed, and animals like Dinogorgon disappeared. But strangely enough, predators weren't the only animals experimenting with bizarre designs. Some herbivores were getting weird too. Number 2. Asteminosuchus. If you were walking across a Permian landscape and saw Asteminosuchus, your first thought probably wouldn't be, "Oh, what a lovely herbivore." You'd probably wonder what happened to its head. Asteminosuchus had a huge, bulky body and strange horn-like structures growing from its skull. Not one pair. Several bizarre projections gave its head a shape that looks almost completely unfamiliar. And here's the funny thing. It wasn't necessarily trying to look terrifying. Asteminosuchus was a herbivore. It wasn't walking around thinking about hunting anything. Its diet was mostly plant material. So why have such an unusual skull? That's where things get interesting. Scientists have proposed several possibilities for those structures. They may have played a role in display, recognition, competition between individuals, or possibly defense. but we can't simply look at the horns and declare exactly what they were for. Fossils don't come with instruction manuals, and that's one of the biggest problems with reconstructing extinct animals. We can see the bones, we can study their structure, we can compare them with living animals. But we can't watch Esteminosuchus walking through a Permian forest. We can't see how it behaved. We can't know exactly what another Esteminosuchus thought when it saw those horns. All we can do is piece the clues together. And the clues give us an animal that looks like a giant prehistoric herbivore wearing a crown it definitely didn't ask for. But if that seems strange, wait until you see what happened to some later mammals. Because eventually, nature produced a creature with a skull that looked like it was designed specifically for causing problems. Number 3. Daeodon. The name alone sounds dangerous. And Daeodon was not small. It belonged to a group of extinct mammals called entelodonts. These animals are sometimes casually described as hell pigs. That's not exactly scientifically accurate. They weren't pigs, but they were distantly related to the group that includes pigs and hippos. And honestly, calling Daeodon a giant pig doesn't really do it justice. Look at the skull. It's enormous. The jaws are powerful. The teeth are built for processing a wide variety of food. And the animal had large, bony structures around the face and jaw. This wasn't a delicate little forest creature. Daeodon was built like an animal that had no interest in asking politely for its food. Scientists think entelodonts were opportunistic omnivores, meaning they could eat a wide variety of things. They may have scavenged, they may have eaten vegetation, they may have hunted or consumed animals when the opportunity presented itself. That flexibility would have been useful, because nature doesn't reward animals for having a fancy diet. It rewards animals that can survive. And Daeodon seems to have been very well equipped for that. Its enormous skull gave it a powerful bite. Its body was large and muscular, and its overall appearance was so strange that if you somehow dropped one into a modern forest, nobody would immediately know what they were looking at. They'd probably just assume the forest had become a terrible place. But Daeodon still wasn't the strangest thing to walk across ancient Earth, because eventually birds decided they were done with flying, and some of them became enormous. Brontornis birds are usually not what you picture when someone says prehistoric giant. You might picture a dinosaur, maybe a mammoth, maybe some enormous predator, but not a bird. And that's exactly why Brontornis is so unsettling. Brontornis was a gigantic flightless bird from South America. It lived millions of years ago, and estimates suggest it may have stood around 3 meters tall. That's not a bird you casually shoo out of your garden. That's a bird that would make you reconsider whether you actually need to be outside. Its body was massive, its legs were powerful, and its size alone would have made it an impressive presence in its environment. There has been debate about exactly how Brontornis lived and what it ate. Older interpretations sometimes portrayed giant birds like this as terrifying predators, but newer research has challenged some of those assumptions. And that's important. Just because an extinct animal looks terrifying doesn't mean it was a killer. Brontornis may have been more heavily built than some of its famous relatives. Its exact lifestyle remains an area where scientists have to work with incomplete evidence. But here's what we do know. It was enormous. It couldn't fly. and it walked across South America at a time when giant flightless birds occupied ecological roles that feel completely alien today. And then there's the fact that it was still technically a bird. That's probably the strangest part, because once a bird gets this big, the word bird starts feeling slightly inappropriate. But if you think Brontornis was impressive, wait until you meet an animal that makes modern elephants look almost ordinary. Number 5. Dinotherium. Today, elephants are already enormous. You can stand beside one and immediately understand just how absurdly large a land animal can become. Now take that basic idea and change the tusks. Dinotherium was an enormous relative of modern elephants. Some species reach several meters in height, but its most bizarre feature was right under its face. The tusks curved downward from the lower jaw, not upward, downward, which gives Dinotherium a look that seems almost backwards. Scientists have suggested that these tusks may have helped with stripping bark, pulling vegetation, digging, or other interactions with the environment. Their exact function isn't completely settled, but whatever they were used for, the animal clearly wasn't just a slightly weird modern elephant. It was its own evolutionary experiment. And that's a recurring theme with extinct animals. We tend to imagine evolution as a straight line, like animals slowly improve until they become what we see today. But that's not how it works. Evolution branches, it experiments, it produces variations. Some survive, others don't. Dinotherium was one of those branches. It lived for millions of years. It spread across large parts of the old world. And eventually, it disappeared, leaving behind bones that allow us to reconstruct a creature that looks strangely familiar, until you notice the tusks. Then you realize you're looking at something that hasn't walked the earth for a very long time.